Hello, everybody. White, Jessica Squire. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bonjour. Tanishi, I'm doing a mission language course this week. So all of the hellos in all of the ways that I can. So excited to have us join us today. We've got a couple of hundred people and that waterfall is rising. I'm going to start sharing and let you know where we're at and get going here, because we always feel like we don't have enough time. Let's start. Aha, there we go. So welcome to the next installment of the Spring Virtual Workshop series. Today is the 23rd of April and we are talking invasive species education and action. Over 300 people live in the room. How fantastic. So grateful for each and every one of you here. And today we have Jennifer Hegan and Stephanie Weinstein joining us for this amazing opportunity. For my land acknowledgement today, I think I was introduced, and it's tied to invasive species because these are the things. And I think I was introduced to these through a local invasive species council doing some work through the outdoor sort of education stuff that I'm doing. So for me, it's been a few-year journey and learning when I moved here of the different species from England, and then obviously then connecting in to the Indigenous knowledge of the deep-rooted relationships that people have with plants here, and all of the different levels of them as people, as medicine, as part of tradition, as part of culture, as part of food. And so I think for me, my greatest land acknowledgement today is this was taken last week, and every child, nearly 300 kids, planted a food or a pollinator plant, native species, with me last week at my local school. And I was just deeply honoured to feel like I had a relationship with those plants. So I live in the traditional territories of the Snipes, the people of the bull trout. And so we were learning the Inseltine words for some of the basic plants. We were also looking at the Secwepemcin or Secwepemc language, because that's all of the region to the west of us, and they've come up into this valley as well. And like back here, it's Mitsuku, raspberry cane in that language. We have the Tnaha to the east of us who've influenced and given knowledge, and also to the Okanagan silks that have utilised this place as well and have stories and connection to the plant and relatives in that field. So I'm just really grateful for the knowledge that I've had that's not only from the scientific world but Indigenous world, and both of those. I might post a link to an amazing Secwepemc ethnobotany paper that was written if you're interested, because there's just so much incredible work being done. I'm really grateful for each and every one of it. Steph's here with me.
Hello. Aw.
Yeah, I did tell you I put that awesome picture in.
Thank you. Oh, and I'm spotlit. Thank you. We are really getting dialed these days. So if you're brand new, it's always like this, I promise. And if you're joining again, welcome back. It's so lovely to see everyone talking in the chat and saying hello and saying where they're from. We'll do an official poll in a minute to see where everyone's calling in from. But if you are able to, you can write it in the chat. But I'm calling in from the traditional territory of the Kawatsin Nation, their unceded land, and it's also the homelands of the Hokaminam speaking people more generally. Coast Salish territory is where I grew up on Vancouver Island in BC. I'm sure there's lots of BC people just by nature of the organizations presenting today. So it's nice to be among friends, but it's also so lovely to see this wide-ranging audience too. I hope it's beautiful where you are calling in from today. Kawatsin is the Hokaminam name, actually means to warm one's back in the sun. So I'm definitely, the sun is just peeking over. It's resting on my sleeping dog right now, which is lovely. So I hope you all have that wonderful, at least that wonderful of a view for now. I'm the program manager at Take Me Outside, and I'm happy to be co-hosting here with Jade. And I'm seeing already questions and stuff coming in, which is amazing. So that's my job. I'll be in the chat answering questions and keeping track of your questions too. So I'll pass it back to Jade, who will continue with the presentation, but also do like a little Zoom 101 at some point too.
Totally. And that does remind me, thank goodness, I have my tag team partner who is the organized one, who can remind me that, yes, welcome. We're in webinar mode, so we can't see your beautiful faces, all nearly 400 of you. I'm sorry. There's just too much interest here for us to fit you all in a meeting that would function in a way that was accessible. So a couple of options. You can reach out using the chat button at the bottom. And when you click that chat button, you'll see there's a blue bar and it says everyone, or it might say hosts and panelists. If you click that little blue bar with the arrow, then make sure it says everyone, then we can all see your messages. If you're sharing resources or ideas, which seems to be a thing through this beautiful community of practice is building. If you have questions for our amazing presenters who I'll introduce in a moment, you can use the Q&A button. It might be under more with the 3 dots if you've got a big bar like mine, but you can pop them in there and we'll put them in a document and we'll try and pose as many as we can at the end of the workshop after the presentation. If you would like to share a bit of image or let us know you're here, you can try and use the reactions button. So that's on your bottom bar as well. And that will give you an opportunity to do, someone's found the celebration, a thumbs up, that's it. So because we can't see your lovely faces, if there's something you like or you're excited by in the presentation, you can show those and our presenters will be able to feel your energy. That's magic. I love it. It's working. If it helps you to be a part of this workshop more easily, there is also closed captions available. It is AI generated, so they're not infallible. And so you'll find them under more again, and under closed captions, you can enable them. And let's just dive in. If you have any questions or you're stuck, please send us a message in the chat and either Steph and I will support you in getting access. Okay, I'm going to set a little poll in action because we're really interested in where you're joining us from. So I'm going to launch the introduction polls. We're going a bit global today because why not? So there's 2 questions. Top one says, where are you joining us from? Sometimes we break it down to all the bits of Canada and all the bits of the US. But I wonder if there's any people coming from different continents today. And the second question was, what kind of educator are you? Are you informal, grade 3, higher or lower, indoors or outdoors? Nice. And if you're sort of there are limited options in the old what you can put in the poll, so if you're not covered there, please share in the chat, share with us who you are and what you're doing here, and we'll just leave it open for just another few seconds here. Dean, outdoors, 100%. I 100% love that and respect that. And Kirsten's doing adult education. I love that. I find a lot of the sort of like parent volunteers or people come in our youth programs, especially things I've done with invasive species, the adults have been most mind blown from the information that's coming in. Oh, so cool. Girl Guide Leader, yes, you're in there. You're important, each and every one of you. Okay, I'm ending the poll. I'm going to share the results. We got a Canada strong audience today and not so many folks from around the globe, but that's okay. You can watch the recording because your time zone's probably a bit funny. And here we are. So we've got somebody from every kind of group we could think of that would fit in the box. So it's really exciting. Lots of early childhood, lots of K-3, some older students as well, an informal community. Amazing. Basically, each and every one of you is welcome here, and each and every one of you is doing important work, whatever that role looks like. And we're really grateful that you're joining us and being a part of this promoting outdoor learning movement. It really is amazing work, and we're so happy to be here with you doing it. All right, takes a village, and we've got a whole heap of fantastic partners and advisors doing amazing work. I'm just going to flick through their images now so you can see all the people who are committed to delivering or offering outdoor learning, connected resources across Canada and lots in the US as well. You can go to our website. Steph will put the link in the chat. And if you need support with resources, tools, funding, you'll find them in that spot. We've got a couple of exciting things coming up. If you really love these online learning spaces, but you would like to be in a meeting with a bit more back and forth and learning, the next seasonal course we have coming up is the amazing artist, author, educator, Leah Marie Dorian, where we're going to be learning about the Métis way of connecting to the land through resources and learning activities. It's going to be beautiful. She's a great human. It's going to be very interactive. And if you haven't already and you're interested in really sort of diving deep and solidifying your outdoor learning practice, we created a 30-hour outdoor learning certification program that you can go through. It's self-paced online and a live workshop every month to get feedback and support and build community of practice. And we would love to see you there. But it's really exciting. Yeah, there are lots of French resources in there, Monique. And also we will be doing a French version of the certification. You heard it here first. That will be hopefully live next year. So watch this space. But there are lots of French resources, both in the outdoor learning store and Take Me Outside. You'll find a French resource section within our resource pages. Okay, an amazing new education kit is out, curated by the fantastic people you're going to hear from today, around being able to integrate invasive species education in your place. And I'm really excited to learn more about it and the other amazing things. And so we're here for Invasive Species Education in Action. So Jen Hegan brings environmental science background, a passion for forest foraging, growing food, and experiential learning to invasive species education. It's so cross-subject, it's so exciting. Jen is lucky enough to live and farm in the Bulkley Valley of northern British Columbia, where she's worked for 20 years as an educator in food security and outdoor and nature-based teaching. Welcome, Jen.
Yeah.
And Stephanie Weinstein is an avid naturalist and environmental educator based in Victoria, BC. She's passionate about connecting people to nature and inspiring them to learn about, care for, and take action to protect biodiversity. As the Senior Lead of Education with the Invasive Species Council of BC, the ISCBC, Stephanie supports educators with place-based outdoor learning and with integrating invasive species learning and action into their teaching. It's so excited to have you both here. I'm going to stop sharing and let you get the sharing. I'm going to spotlight you for everyone. And by the way, if you're not from BC, it's okay. Lots of these things are relevant or going to give you that space to go into your place and connect with your invasive species. And so I shall pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jade. Jen and I are so excited to be here. Can you see my screen okay?
It looks absolutely perfect. I would just say one thing. If anyone did do the Zoom update, you might find at the top of your bar that you have, right at the top of your screen, sorry, two bars. One says webinar and one says Stephanie's screen. So you can click between the two of them. One does just faces, one does the screen share. Just as a heads up in case anyone's new into the new Zoom, which I am, and it's a new feature. But it looks perfect for me. Take it away.
Okay, great. Well, we're super excited to be here. And yeah, thank you so much for that introduction. I wanted to also just reassure you, yes, we are from British Columbia, but what we're sharing with you today is relevant to wherever you are. And I am a nomad. I have 3 citizenships and I've lived all over North America. So I understand how important it is to have that kind of relevance to wherever you are. And this topic is something that Jen and I are so excited about because learning about invasive species really brings together so many great things, including this place-based learning that we all care so much about, teamwork and collective action to help the environment and your communities, which gives such a great feeling of hope and optimism when you can see the results on the ground. And we sure need as much of that as we can have. So we work with the Invasive Species Council of British Columbia, which is a provincial charity and nonprofit society. Our mission shown here is to take action to build healthy landscapes, habitats, and communities through education and responsible practices to prevent the spread of invasive species. And partnerships are really the key thing to achieving our mission, We work collaboratively with many groups, including governments, regional invasive species organizations, Indigenous communities, youth, and educators. And although our focus is in invasives in the province of BC, we work with invasive species organizations across Canada and in the United States. So yeah, our website is there. No matter where you are, it's really an amazing source of information about invasives and the issue. And we have lots of free downloads that you can check out there as well. So what we'll be sharing with you today are some of the things that are featured in the new Invasive Species Education Kit. And it's really, as I said before, relevant to wherever you may be. The specific invasive species that impact your area may be different than the ones that we're going to be using as examples, but the concepts and activities that we will be sharing are all applicable, and that's our main focus today, so no matter where you are. All right, so Jen is going to start off with a little fun icebreaker activity to warm you up and a fun thing that you can do with students. All right, Jen.
Right, yeah, so get your quick typing fingers ready because we're going to play a bit of a who am I game. We have three species you're going to guess. And you can see in front of you now is a template for a little poster. And we have a copy of this in the activities that are provided in the new Invasive Species Action Kit. And yeah, so it's a way for students or anyone to do a little bit of research on an invasive species and promote it on a page to put out in the school or your community. So we're going to start off with a picture. If we can fire up the first picture here. If anyone knows this flower, write it in the chat. And then we can go with the bigger picture as well there. That's right. I see some good answers flying away. Next will be a written clue about what its potential crime is, one of its crimes against biodiversity. So infects and clogs waterways, quickly spreads with up to 3 million seeds per plant in one season. So prolific. All right, so it is, as many of you have been guessing, purple loosestrife. Nice work. Okay, next one, next wanted poster. We're going to start off with a written clue about its crime against biodiversity. So it's an animal, filters plankton from waters, reducing food and aquatic environments to native animals, covers shorelines and underwater structures. Okay, I see the answers starting to come in. Let's go with some pictures now. There we go. There's our species wanted. I see lots of good answers. Okay, and the answer, of course, is zebra mussels. And on our poster, we have a spot to say how we can stop the spread of this criminal, in quotes, clean all watercraft. So our final one, it's another plant, and our clue is that it can burn skin with toxic sap. So there's a few invasive plants known for this sort of superpower to protect themselves from being eaten and pulled by us. So I see a few different names coming up, a little more variety in our answers. But let's see, this is our picture to give away that it shades out other native plants by its giant leaves. And it becomes it's a giant member of the carrot family. So answer is giant hogweeds, yes. And it's important to help stop the spread, report all sightings of this plant and use expert advice on how to remove seed heads and the plant itself. So yeah, thanks for everybody for jumping in on that. That was kind of fun to see all those answers flying by. All right, so now to get into some terms and definitions, which is really important when we want to dive into a new subject. And we could spend the next 30 minutes actually just discussing the nuances between all these words, because they're a little bit different depending on our region of North America, how we may use them, and over time they've come in and out of fashion. But we're going to go into three main, we think, most important terms when we're working with our learners to really, get us all on the same page. So first and foremost, we want to define what a native species is. And we'll read the definition here. It's an organism that has lived and evolved in a certain place for a long time, and it's in balance with the ecosystem. So that's the key, it's in balance. So our example here is kinnikinick or bearberry, which is actually quite common across most of North America as a low ground cover plant. And as you can see by our icons, it provides great nutrition and food for, let's say, the larvae of caterpillars of butterflies, and then the fruits, food for other wildlife, the flowers being sources of pollen and food, nectar for butterflies and bees. And then of course people fit into this too, right? So we have our traditional ecosystem knowledge that indigenous peoples have demonstrated to use this plant over the years. So that's really a good a definition of a native species. In contrast now to our invasive species. So we have a species here that is, well, a few examples here are not native. So they've come from away to a region whose introduction and their spread harms the environment. So that's the key here. So they're harming ourselves, our society, the environment, the economy. So this distinguishes this trait of harming distinguishes them from other non-native animals and plants, such as some classic examples here. We see ornamental tulips and sheep and wheat. So these are typically our agricultural food and our horticultural garden plants have been moving around the world with us over the last few hundred years. But they're not all invasive. So we have other terms that we might be using for these, like not native and introduced and exotic. So that's where we might see people using those words. And then of course we also have clever students. So we'll say, well, what's a weed, right? Well, we have weeds, and that is sort of a more of a general description to I was going to say subjective description to a plant that's in a place where someone doesn't want it at that particular time. And yeah, kids are always good at making all the connections they have to weeds. But we'll just finally end off with saying that the key differentiation with invasives is that they do cause harm. And so we have quite a few example pictures here, and some words that describe what's going on here is we have like, damage to infrastructure and crops, and wildfire is a growing concern of a lot of prolific invasive species. And so here's just the emotional connection. As educators, we wanted to feel the tug here to make us really wake up to the impact. And even this last statistic here to show you that in North America, in about 4 or 5 years ago, it was calculated that $26 billion was spent on combating invasive species. So that really drives it home for a lot of us. Okay, so back to some more big picture thoughts, but connecting.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jen. So no matter where you are in the world, invasive species are a big problem for biodiversity. And many of you may know that the United Nations declared that this decade is the decade of ecosystem restoration. So there's no better time than now to help to restore biodiversity, including taking action on invasive species. And there's a lot of amazing and effective work going out there that we should be really proud of and optimistic about. So as for taking action on invasive species, it all starts with caring about a place, which is what I think fits so well with the amazing work that we see here with Outdoor Learning Store and all of the partners. So what I'm sharing here is what we think of as the cycle of caring and action, which are ways that we can all help to make a difference on invasive species and what you can facilitate with your learners. And we will be digging deeper into each of these steps and sharing student activities for each as well. So the first thing that is really fundamental is just connecting to place. So get to know nature in your neighborhood, go outdoors and just look around and be still and notice. And the more you notice, the more you feel connected and care. So go outdoors regularly, notice changes through the seasons, learn about the stories and the history of the land and the traditions and deep connections of the indigenous people of that place. And this really leads to a greater awareness. So we can start to notice and learn about what's native, what's introduced, what's invasive in our area. How did the invasive species get here and what are their impacts? Which then can lead us to thinking about how we can really prevent the spread. And prevention is the name of the game with invasive species. We want to be able to take action before it becomes much more difficult and costly to make a difference. And there are many best practices that can help prevent invasive species from spreading that we'll be touching on in this presentation. And of course, we also really want to remove invasive species and restore the habitat. And this helps to not only repair the land, but also our relationship with it. And this is also a really important aspect of reconciliation with Indigenous communities. And this also further deepens our connection to place. And so this is a cycle with engagement points all along the way. It's not a linear journey. And right in the middle there, central to everything, is sharing, sharing your ideas, your knowledge, your care, your love for the land and for community. And so, yeah, that's, I feel like, the central part and the most important thing about it. So, having seen that cycle of caring in action, we'll be sharing just some activity ideas to help you and your students connect to place and foster that curiosity and develop a deeper connection to the land. So looking closely, here is just a snapshot photo from one of the copy pages that's in this new Invasive Species Education Activities booklet, available in the kit and on its own. So this includes several activities and copy pages that just for when you need a little bit of help to foster focused outdoor observations. Like this one is called Be a Plant Detective. And in this activity, students look closely at the features of plants, noticing things they would otherwise miss, and maybe even help to identify it and discover if the plant is native or if it was introduced, or maybe if it's invasive. Another really great way to help foster a connection to place and deepen awareness of the natural world is to really focus on sensory observations. And in this activity, Wetland Wonders, students use all their senses in a variety of guided activities at a freshwater habitat. So this lesson is another one that's included in this hot off the press publication that is available through the Outdoor Learning Store called Aquatic Invaders, Connecting to and Protecting Our Waterways. So although the aquatic invasive species examples in this guide are focused on those in BC or the Pacific Northwest, the activities are relevant no matter where you go. So back to that cycle of caring and action. So as we connect to the land and become more aware of invasive species and their impacts, we can learn more about how they spread and ways that we can prevent this. So these logos represent programs that remind us of how we can all take simple actions to prevent the spread of invasive species. These shown here are primarily for programs in Canada. Some are also in the United States, but there might be different slogans or logos in your region. But I just wanted to emphasize that the concepts are the same, because no matter where you are, invasive species have similar ways that they're introduced and spread. So these programs are useful themes for lessons and activities for students on how to prevent the spread and take action. So we'll be digging deeper into each one of these. So hitching a ride on land. So invasive species, plants in particular, but insects as well. They're master hitchhikers, like these burdock burrs shown here with their hooked spines, which were actually inspired the invention of Velcro. I think when I was a kid, that was a new cool thing. Came from the idea of looking closely at burdock. So they hitch a ride on our clothing, our gear, our pets, and vehicles in outdoor recreation. So we can prevent them from spreading by practicing what we call play, clean, go. So this is just making it a habit to do a quick check of your outdoor gear, boots, and clothing before getting to an outdoor recreation site, and removing all plant parts and mud before you leave, like this boot brush station at the trailhead. And so how do you want to teach about play, clean, go? So here's a really fun hands-on activity from the kit called Don't Pick Up Hitchhikers. And this is all about discovering how invasive species can hitch a ride and how we can prevent them from spreading. So the first step is to play. So wherever you are in your outdoor excursions, in the schoolyard or in a park, it's really fun. Kids love this, adults as well. I've done this with teachers. So try putting a big woolly sock over one of your shoes and then go for a walk in tall grass or along a trail. And then see what gets picked up on your sock or on your pants, on your backpack.
Fleece
And
mitts are really good too.
oh yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
fleece
Jen living
mitts.
in the cold
Yeah,
parts of
yeah.
Canada where you need fleece mittens. Yep, and you could just, as you walk around and touch the plants around you. And then so that's the play part. Then clean is when you all gather together in a group and take a look and remove what's on you. So you can use a boot brush. This is also available in the kit or from the Outdoor Learning Store, also on the BC Invasives website. So you can get some boot brushes or even use old toothbrushes or tweezers and remove what you have, and then take a closer look. Start to look at the features that help these plants get around. And you could use, simple things like from the recycling bin, like egg cartons or little Tupperwares to gather some of those things that have been collected and see what they look like and what you've found. The activity also has a tally sheet where you can record observations and make sketches and tally up what you've found. And then you can go on to the next site and know that that you have done your part to prevent the spread of invasive species. Oh yeah, I wanted to point out this beautiful picture here, Play Clean Go. We have some beautiful stickers that students love as well, available on the bcinvasives.ca website. All right, over to you, Jen.
All right, now we're going to dive into the water part of aquatic invasive species and how we can understand and learn about them hitching onto things like our boats and our fishing gear and our floaties, and how they can go from one water body to another with us, and then how we can stop this spread by practicing clean, drain, dry. And it's all about being sure to inspect all our water equipment before we leave an area. And we want to prevent, let's say, that big strands of Eurasian milfoil we saw on that boat from going from one place to another, but also things like zebra and quagga mussels. And we're starting to see more and more along highways and at boat launches, these mandatory water inspection sites. So this is important information as students might be wondering as they'll see these things coming up, and how this is all part of being responsible citizens in invasive species world. So one of our favorite activities for teaching about clean, drain, dry, for example, is we call them vectors of spread. Where we demonstrate, we have students doing hands-on experiments to see how they move things like aquatic invasive species. And this is an activity that's also given in depth in our Aquatic Invaders booklet, and also the Green Teacher magazine that's part of the invasive species kit with the Outdoor Learning Store. So we can see from this activity that it's a hands-on way to have you have bins of water that represent maybe lakes in your area, and you would, in one bin, you're going to add some flake in some herbs, maybe some thyme or something like this, and that will be like your Eurasian milfoil. And then you'll have the students dump into that bin the toy boats, things from your recycling, anything that floats, and have all the pieces of herbs attached to it. And then for it to go into the clean bin of water, the clean lake, they have to take the challenge of cleaning it as best as they can. So you can get some spray bottles, some rags, toothbrushes, and challenge them to how quickly they can clean off that invasive plant, and then see how it fares in the clean bodies of water. So this is a real nice experiential learning opportunity. And we like to often say, try this one outside for the aquatic part on a nice day if it involves water. And then we can also look to our schoolyards and outdoors, or our gardens, for how our gardens can be a primary source of moving invasive species, our horticultural industry. And of course, some of our most invasive plants are some of our most beautiful plants. So we've moved them around with us, we buy them, and we also like to share them. And school gardens are great recipients of shared plants, but we have to be careful of what people are splitting from their own gardens and bringing into our schools. This next slide shows how we have even just like these 6 examples in BC are some of the top selling plants, invasive plants. And so it's happening we are sourcing these from our garden centers already. And we don't have legislation yet to prevent the sale of invasive species, so we have to be well-educated consumers, and that begins with us and our students as well. Let's say in Eastern Canada and the South, I've heard that like dog strangling vine and kudzu are devastating gardens and wild spaces now, and they were introduced as ornamental plants. And the other thing too is another source, not just the plants, is that we have seed mixes, wildflower seed mixes that are being sprouted out, and finding that more and more of these are containing pretty prolific invasive plants. So if you've ever liked to do the seed bomb activity with students, where you pound some earth and clay together and get students launching some seeds out, well, if you're going to use a wildflower mix, we gotta do our research, because they could be a source of invasive plants. And then also our gardens and even our neighborhood front yards these days are in bloom. It's a place to learn about where some of the invasive plants are coming from our gardens. And there is the PlantWise program that is quite common across Canada and in some regions, and it even includes these. If you go to your regional invasive species organizations websites, you might find things like I have a pamphlet here, Grow Me Instead for BC, and there's Grow Me Instead guides for other parts of Canada, and other regions have their own websites of what might be an ornamental plant that you need to stay away from and what you can plant instead. And we actually even like to suggest to educators to download pictures or find a brochure like this and just go for a neighborhood walk and see what your students can find in a bit of an I Spy exercise about what is in people's gardens. And it's also another good thing with Mother's Day coming up, to maybe go find some information off websites about what are some alternatives to these invasive ornamental plants, and with what could be a native plant, and to think about that when you're planning maybe some of your Mother's Day gift ideas. And just a great activity that we like to use for really having kids students zone in on how amazing plants can be, in demonstrating their characteristics for having a competitive edge, is to use like a copy sheet that we provide here called the Amazing Adaptations Hunt. And it can be a scavenger hunt done at a school garden, anywhere in your schoolyard, and particularly in the fall when all the seed heads are there, when you've come back to school and there's all the plants have fully developed. And it's a great way for students to really make observations and record them about the ability that plants have to multiply. And this one too, for example, we actually have in French on our website. So we have quite a few copy sheets available in French for download on our website. Back to you, Steph. More activities.
Okay, that's great. So another way that invasive species can be introduced and spread is by pets that are let loose. So many started out as pets or in home aquariums. So these are just some pictures of some of those that are problems in British Columbia. And there are certainly many, many others, especially I saw somebody was coming from Florida, or so if you're from a warmer climate, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So one thing to note here is the red-eared slider is invasive in BC and in many other parts of the world, but it's native to the Mississippi River drainage in the southern and central United States. But it's a really common pet, and it's been released outside of its native range where it becomes invasive. It competes with native turtles and for habitat, and can spread disease to turtles and other wildlife. And now this one is just outrageous. So some of you may know this already, but this little goldfish, when let loose into the wild, so pay attention, if it's let loose or even flushed live, because they can survive our sewage systems. Here we go. This is what a goldfish can become in the wild. It can get to be as large as a football and weigh up to 3 kilograms, and can cause a whole range of negative impacts, including reducing water clarity. They're really messy eaters, and that having less light impacts plant growth, which then can really reduce habitat for other native aquatic species, among many other impacts. So this is really important to know, don't let it loose, and find alternatives for animals we can no longer care for, and to not dump aquarium waters into water bodies. So one way to teach don't let it loose, you could see this poster, this beautiful drawing here, is to just have students do a creative project that includes research as well as art and communication. So they can learn about some of the invasives that started out as pets in your region, and then make a display to raise awareness, maybe posted in the community or in the school, maybe even at a pet store, to how we can protect the environment by not dumping pets into the wild. And also, there's lots of great fun games. You could turn any game of tag into something to learn about invasive species. We have some ideas in the little activity booklet that's in the Outdoor Learning Store. So in this example, you could learn about Don't Let It Loose by playing Roundup Tag. Roundup Tag is where everyone starts out as a native species. For example, maybe a native mouse or a vole. And then somebody releases their pet into the wild. Maybe it's a European rabbit that someone got for Easter and they're now bored of it, so they thought they would let it go in the park. But then that rabbit tags the others and they join forces with the other rabbits as taggers. That's Roundup Tag. So representing how they outcompeted them for food or other habitat components. So even very young children very quickly get it, how one what a release of a couple animals can quickly cause huge problems. And here's a sticker that kids really love too. Don't let it loose. And finally, another way that invasive species can spread and harm trees and forests is by being transported in infested firewood to new places. So often the first outbreaks of forest pests are seen in campgrounds. And by transporting wood into campsites, we can inadvertently bring insect hitchhikers, like some of these shown here. Many of you might already be dealing with some of the really huge, devastating problems that some of these insects cause that are actively spreading and across North America and in BC and in many other parts of the continent. We're also trying very hard to make sure that they don't arrive in our area. So as especially as the warmer weather comes and as camping season comes around, we want to really emphasize to others how we can prevent the spread of these insects by not moving for firewood. So buy local, burn local. So how to teach about buy local, burn local. This is a really great opportunity to learn more about insects and their life cycles. And these students are looking closely at some of this wood, the holes in the logs, to see what might be living there, which is interesting in and of itself. But as it relates to preventing the spread of invasive species, you can also play a little game where you could see on the right, there's some little beads in the logs. So we hid some grains of rice or a certain number of beads, and they had to see how many they could find. And that represents the insect eggs or the larvae. And here we go, buy it where you burn it. That's another logo from the States. And don'tmovefirewood.org is a really interesting, has a great website, really useful information that includes a map of North America. And you can click on your state or province and see what forest pests they're trying to prevent from spreading in your area.
Just Steph, I was just going to add that if you ever wanted to do like a study of logs in the fall when the decomposition started to really happen, it's a great way to tie in invasive species into decomposition studies as well. And kids just really get a kick out of what they find in rotting logs and all the little cavities. So that's when I find I'm most successful with this activity.
Yeah. There's a lot of life in a log, and that's why we want to make sure that we don't move it to a new place where that life might not have been in the first place. Yeah. Thanks, Jen. So another great way to get these concepts across. If you're looking for a quiet game, you want to get everybody quiet and focused in your group, you don't need any preparation, no materials needed. So just maybe gathering under a tree outside or getting them calm in the classroom. A lot of students already know how to play, kids know how to play Wink Birder. So this is just an invasive species twist on the game. So one student is designated as the secret forest pest in the firewood, and everybody else tries to figure out who that is by looking around the group. And if that person winks at you, well, it is not good. So, and you try to figure out where that forest pest is, report the invasive. So this helps to bring to life how slowly and quietly invasive species can spread. And again, like, attention to all of you people that are working with older students, intermediate or high school teachers. So another really, or even for yourself, for adults, like, this is the best thing ever. And it's really, I learned so much by using these apps and identification tools. So a great way to connect to place and prevent the spread is to get involved in community science, also called citizen science. There are many different useful free apps and programs to track invasive species. If you're not familiar with iNaturalist, it's really incredible. I recommend downloading it if you don't have it. It not only can help you to identify species, there's lots of things that do that, but iNaturalist is different because your photos contribute to science and conservation of biodiversity. So it's used in a different way than something like Google Lens. And you become part of a global community of over 3 million users. You could search for and join iNaturalist projects in your region so that your photos, your observations help to monitor invasive species. So here's just a couple of them. In North America and in Canada, I Spy and Identify Invasives is the one that we use. And there may be others that you use, other apps or other iNaturalist projects. Feel free to share in the chat if there's something you recommend. And if you're in British Columbia, we also recommend the Report Invasive Species app or program. It's also available on the web. And we have a spot on our website where we have little tutorials to show you how to use some of these reporting tools. And I think it's over to you, Jen.
Okay, well, yeah, but before we sort of wind things down, we want to really acknowledge how we love to have our students outside doing things. And these pictures demonstrate some success that Steph had with a group pulling ivy in a forest. And this 6 months later, how the native bulbs of the native plants, the fawn lilies, their bulbs just were released with this carpet of ivy having been removed and allowing them to get the sunlight they needed to really take off. So yeah, becoming habitat stewards is a great goal for us to do with our young learners and our students. But here are some tips that we've had with our experience with educators over the years. And that is to really get to know your place, like we've emphasized, is to understand your connection to your native ecosystem and learn from your locals, engage your local regional invasive species groups, and even the indigenous elders and your habitat conservation type groups. And they can probably support you in understanding the plants and animals that are around you, but also how to go about maybe doing some plant removal and connect you with like a local initiative to get your feet wet and by attending some events. And think about maybe just inviting them or just starting yourself in your schoolyard. Your own little green space is a great place for us all to understand that it doesn't have to be big. It can just be small and our own little place to be stewards. And it's important to think about the planning that would go into this, because you do need to understand probably the best timing of when to remove some plants, when to not trample maybe some native plants like these fawn lilies. And if you are in contact with your local experts and your regional governments, they can even support you in ways of how to remove, how to dispose, and give you some logistical help. So that's important when we want to get out there and do some real hands-on action work. And then when we do get a chance to do this, in the little ways that we can, in one corner of a schoolyard or something, is that we are doing acts of reconciliation and restoration and practice with our traditional ways of using the land. And maybe a little shout out here right now to the Green Teacher magazine that's part of the kit, because it really gives some good examples of action projects and in across North America, and of course some really good ideas too of how we can all be part of, like, playing games and such, not to be part of that cycle of caring and action. And now, just on that final note about action, we want to just do a shout out to people for connecting with their invasive species councils or organizations that are either on a national level. In Canada, we're going to have National Invasive Species Action Week coming up in the middle of May, so keep on top of what might be coming from them. In BC, we're going to dedicate the whole month of May to Invasive Species Action Month. So we're going to have many events in many communities supported and advertised. And the US has a great national organization that might be a great outlet for finding out all the things that might be going on in the spring. And Steph and I just are always on it, and it can, any time of year is a great time of year for working with students on invasive species. As you know, it can fit into many aspects of curriculum and just our connecting to the land. So we welcome you to get in touch with us if you have any questions.
Yeah, so also if there's events in your area and coming up, feel free to share that as well. So thank you so much for coming. We're really happy to be able to share some of this with you. And even though we're in British Columbia, feel free to reach out to us. Our email is there. We're always excited to hear from people, no matter where you are. It's great to hear about the kinds of projects and questions, anything, you know, we're always happy to hear from people. So thank you. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Jen. That was amazing. So many thanks coming in the chat as well. I don't know if you turn that off or you have access to that right now. And lots of people resource sharing, and like people saying, oh, I'm going to do that tomorrow. Oh, which I think is just the most powerful tool of giving people things that they feel like they can implement. Amazing. I feel like you did answer some of these, but let's just dive into just a couple of questions, or we've got like 2 minutes before we're going to do prizes, so stick around everyone as well. And there were lots of people sharing resources of invasive species links. They're in our shared resource sheet. I'm sure Steph can share the link again, but that are North America wide. So just a quick look down that list. A lot of them have maps. You'll be in there. But can you remind people what to do if they how to dispose of invasive species, please? Because if they find it, they identify it, they want to get rid of it.
Yeah, good question.
I'll
start.
I was gonna say,
go ahead.
Disposal, it can be specific to your community and region, and but often we have to actually put them in the garbage, which is really counterintuitive when we have vegetation, and I find that I'm personally really have a hard time with that. But if invasive plants can spread through compost, they don't compost very well, and we just have to really be very diligent about not allowing them to escape. So Steph, you have some more that you can add to that.
Yeah, that's the same. The composting process doesn't necessarily, it can be a way that they spread, but there's becoming more and more interest in ways to use different invasive species. And actually, I wanted to point out, you know, in this Green Teacher, there's a great thing here about weaving with invasive weeds. So that's also you know, another option too. So some people want to do art with them, make weavings, cook with them. So that's one way to keep them out of the landfill. You have to be very careful. Like some things may have been sprayed with pesticides, or, you know, so you have to really know your site. But the main thing is, don't put them in the compost unless you know specifically from your municipality that it's okay to do so.
And I feel like, so people are asking about animals, people are talking about what to replace it with once it's removed. And I feel like you touched on this, but again, so of course, it's really regional specific. So it's really about, and even with a quick Google search on that, invasivespecies.org, for example, that organization, you'll find your region. It's really just about tying it to your place specifically, identifying what's invasive there, finding out what your municipality will do with it, right? And I feel like if you don't have this knowledge, what an amazing inquiry project to do with students, to find out together, right? To get them to do the research and to start looking and maybe sketching those, going out and trying to find them, looking at replacements. I feel like that could be a really amazing way to implement this learning.
Yeah, and sometimes people remove them and don't have a plan in place, and then it can be discouraging if they come back. So what are you going to do? So you have to have a longer term plan, or they're replaced by a different invasive species. So then what do you do? So again, I think that's a great idea, Jade. That it's thinking that as we're here to learn, and let's figure out what might have been here in the past, like connect with the history of the place. And try to restore the soil and plant some native plants, and or the waters might need to be changed. So sometimes it can become a big project with restoration, but the first step, I think, is removing it. And if they come back, okay, so we'll keep at it. And yeah,
Persistence.
Patience.
No, I've had some really interesting, there's people talking about, tying it into things like cats, people having cats and the issues with birds. Like, there's so many different ways. And for me, I've recently learned about this sort of concept of sort of like ecological racism through certain plants and things like tulips, right? They were introduced that are sort of colonial plants that we see as really important and these signs of spring, but aren't native. And so what I would say as well is that it's like, I'm learning a lot as I go in through this invasive angle, but actually that I can connect it to social studies, I can connect it to history, I can connect it to trying to research and look at the different cultural values of different native plants and what it meant and what it was connected to, whether that's indigenous or whether that's in the last couple of generations or whether that's in a multicultural lens. And so I would say, like, for people, just like dive down the rabbit hole, because it's like ISCBC have amazing resources, and there are lots of other beautiful resources online or in a kit like the one they've curated that can really just help you open up this world of cross-curricular learning.
Well put, Jade. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm so passionate. You've taught me
amazing.
so much, and I've been implementing it with students. And we did a like eco superheroes video where we went out and did an invasive species pool with our local invasive species council, and then they made a whole presentation about it. They edited the video, it went out to our local news, like people in our community. Like, it was such a good news story. So I'm all in. I'm really sorry, we are trying to honor people's time, your time, everyone that's joined us time. You're amazing. Thank you, Stephanie and Jen. Like, I love working with both of you. This isn't the first, not the last. And yeah, resources, recording, all coming to you in a follow-up email and linked to a certificate tomorrow by 12 p.m. Pacific. If you don't got it, check your spam. If you don't got it in your spam or your junk, send us an email in a response to your Zoom link registration, and we will support you in getting all the things you need. Thank you for being here, both of you.
Thank you so much for having us. And thanks to all the people who came or who are listening to the recording in the future. Yeah, it's so amazing to see so much interest from so many places around the continent. It's really inspiring.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay, if you can hang on, everyone, hang about, because we're just going to do a quick prize draw. It's a random selection. And the first winner, who's getting a $25 gift card to the Outdoor Learning Store, is Trevor Colpitts, TrevaColpitts. Trevor Colpitts, $25 gift card to the Outdoor Learning Store. That will get a copy of one of the resources, not the whole kit, but something in there. Okay, I'm going back up with a little eyes closed scroll. Okay, the next $25 gift card to the Outdoor Learning Store is Eileen McDowell, AILEEN McDowell, Eileen McDowell. You are a winner as well. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, next winner, $25 gift card to the Take Me Outside store is Emily Dimmer. EMILYDIMMER, Emily Dimmer. You are a winner to the Take Me Outside store. And last but very not least is Lisa Olsen, LISAOLSEN. You also win a $25 gift card to the Take Me Outside store. That's it. That's all, folks. Happy spring. Happy
Yay.
Invasive
Thank you.
Species Action. We hope you get out there and do this amazing learning with your students. And I know I feel inspired. I hope you do too. Good night.
See you next
Good night,
time.
everyone.
Okay, so cookie up. Evening.